Hello everyone, welcome to MedTeach. Let's discuss some high-yield points about the human reproductive system. First, let us discuss about the male reproductive system. The primary organs in the male reproductive system include the testis, which is responsible for spermatogenesis and testosterone production. The accessory structures include epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate, and the bulboureteral glands. Hormonal control for the male reproductive system comes from the hypothalamus, which is going to secrete gonadotropin releasing hormone, and this gonadotropin releasing hormone is going to act upon the pituitary and going to produce luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Remember, luteinizing hormone acts upon the Leydig cells of the testis to produce testosterone, and the follicle stimulating hormone acts upon the Sertoli cells of the testis to produce spermatogenesis, and it also causes inhibin secretion. Now, coming to the spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis usually begins at puberty and it takes approximately 64 days and it occurs in the seminiferous tubules. So, this is what the spermatogenesis consists of. If we take spermatogenesis, there is first one spermatogonia, which is going to enter mitosis, and because of this there is production of a primary spermatocyte which enters meiosis 1 division to produce secondary spermatocytes. Remember, meiosis is a division in which one cell is converted into two cells. So one primary spermatocyte is converted into two secondary spermatocytes. Again, these two secondary spermatocytes are going to enter into meiosis 2. That means two cells become four cells. So, two secondary spermatocytes are going to become four spermatocytes but the end of the meiosis 2 division. And then the spermatocytes are converted into sperms, which is a process known as spermiogenesis. And finally, these sperms will be entering the lumen, which is nothing but a spermiation. If we see the semen, finally, 65 to 75% of the semen is going to consist of the secretion from the seminal vesicles, which includes fructose, prostaglandins, protein enzymes, vitamin C, and prostatic fluid. And 10 to 30% of the secretions are going to get received from the prostate, which consists of water, enzymes, proteins, lipids, electrolytes, citric acid, immunoglobulins, and zinc. 1 to 5% of the secretion are going to come from the Cowper's glands, which consists of mucus, various enzymes such as prostate-specific antigen, mucin, and acid phosphatase. 2 to 5% of the secretions are going to come from the testis. Spermatozoa usually consists of 40 million to 500 million per ejaculation. So, basically as we have seen, seminal vesicles secrete a fructose-rich fluid and the prostate is going to secrete alkaline fluid into the semen. Clinical correlation. Benign prostatic hyperplasia is nothing but a condition where there is enlarged prostate, which is going to cause urinary symptoms, and sometimes prostate cancer can also occur, which is common in elderly males. Coming to the female reproductive system, the primary organs in the females are the ovaries, which is going to produce oogenesis, that is, which is going to produce oocytes. The process is known as oogenesis. And then estrogen and progesterone production is also there. Accessory structures of female reproductive system includes the uterus, fallopian tubes, and vagina. And in females, one important cycle that is happening is the menstrual cycle, which consists of three phases. One is the follicular phase, second is the ovulation, third is the luteal phase. In follicular phase, follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the follicle growth. Because of this, there is increase in estrogen. And during ovulation, there is a LH surge which is going to release the ovum. And in the luteal phase, corpus luteum secretes progesterone. The hormonal control for the female reproductive system also comes from the hypothalamus, which is going to secrete GnRH, and this is going to act upon the pituitary to produce luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. As we have already discussed, estrogen is going to act upon the endometrium during the proliferative phase, and progesterone is going to act upon the endometrium during the secretory phase, and this progesterone is responsible for maintaining the pregnancy. Oogenesis generally begins in fetal life and it is arrested at prophase 1 until puberty. So, if we see this oogenesis, first there is a 2N cell, that is oogonia, which is going to become a primary oocyte, and then it becomes a secondary oocyte where the first polar body is excluded, and then this secondary oocyte becomes the ovum where the second polar body is excluded. Important correlation clinically is PCOS, where there is hyperandrogenism and irregular cycles, and there is also endometriosis, which is nothing but an ectopic endometrial tissue which will be causing pain and infertility. Well, how about pregnancy and lactation? See, fertilization usually occurs in the ample of the fallopian tube, and implantation is going to occur when the blastocyst attaches itself to the endometrium on day 6 or the 7. Placenta is an important component that is formed during pregnancy, and its major functions are nutrient exchange, hormonal production, which includes hormone and progesterone. Important hormones include HCG, which is going to maintain corpus luteum, and estrogen and progesterone, which maintains the uterine lining. And lactation is being maintained by two hormones. One is prolactin and second one is oxytocin. Remember, P for P, that is prolactin for milk production, whereas oxytocin is responsible for milk ejection. So progesterone is for milk production and oxytocin is responsible for milk ejection. Understood? Yes. Some important concepts like contraception methods includes various methods like barrier methods, hormonal pills and IUDs, that is intrauterine devices. Some of the sexually transmitted infections seen in females include chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis and HIV. And gynecological cancers which are important include cervical cancer, ovarian cancer. Important investigations that can be performed for female health include the hormonal assays, that is luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, estrogen and progesterone. Imaging is usually involves ultrasound for uterus and ovaries for basic gynecological pathologies, and screening can be done for cervical cancer using a pap smear. And these are the specific investigations that can be performed. For ovarian pathology, we can go for a transvaginal sonography, CA125, and imaging test that can be an abdominal pelvis CT scans, MRI, PET CT, that is chest and X-ray scans. Then cervical pathologies can be investigated by using colposcopy, pap smear or a lead procedure. Uterine pathology is examined using a pelvic examination itself, or we can go for transvaginal ultrasound, even a transabdominal ultrasound, endometrial biopsy, TNC and CA125. Vaginal pathologies can be investigated by using a pap smear and HPV test. Imaging tests like X-ray, CT and MRI can also be helpful. Also a colposcopy. Then fallopian tube pathologies can be investigated using a pap smear, CA125 and imaging tests like MRI, PET CT. And vulvar pathologies, usually a lymph node biopsy is taken. CT, endoscopy, which includes cystoscopy, proctoscopy, can also be performed. Some important points you have to remember is LH triggers ovulation. LH surge triggers ovulation. That is very important point. And you have to know about the spermatogenesis versus oogenesis timelines. HCG is the basis of pregnancy test. So to conclude, spermatogenesis and oogenesis are very important. In oogenesis, there is one oogonia which is going to enter into the mitosis, and this is entering mitosis to produce primary oocytes, and this primary oocyte is arrested till puberty. Then it enters meiosis to produce secondary oocyte and extrudes the first polar body, which enters into meiosis to produce the secondary oocyte and it extrudes the second polar body. And this meiosis too is completed only during fertilization. Remember that. Then coming for spermatogenesis, we have a spermatogonium which is going to enter into mitosis to produce a primary spermatocyte, which enters into the meiosis 1 division to produce 2 secondary spermatocytes, and finally at the end of meiosis 2 will be having 4 spermatodes which will be converted into spermatozoa, which is in a process known as spermiogenesis. That's all for today. I hope this video would have been helpful for you. Follow us for more on MedTeach for more conceptual videos. Thank you for watching.